I was living out of a rusted Honda Civic, eating canned beans in a freezing Ohio rest stop.
I was parked at a lonely rest stop just outside Dayton, Ohio, when my entire life flipped upside down. It was a cold Tuesday, so cold my breath was fogging up the windshield of my 2008 Honda Civic, the same car I'd been living in for the past 6 months. Breakfast and lunch were sitting right there in my lap, a dented can of beans from the Dollar General. I cracked it open with a sigh, telling myself that this had to be rock bottom, that nothing worse could possibly happen. And then my phone buzzed. I figured it was just another debt collector, or maybe one of those scammers trying to convince me my beat-up Civic needed an extended warranty. I hadn't actually spoken to another human being in 3 days, but for some reason something inside me said to just answer it. "Mr. David Patterson?" A crisp, professional female voice asked. "Yeah," I muttered, my mouth dry. "This is Linda Martinez from the Anchorage County Records Office. I'm calling regarding your property, parcel 82C559. I almost laughed out loud. "Lady, I don't own any property. I don't even really own this car. The bank just hasn't gotten around to repossessing it yet." There was a pause on the other end. "Sir, our records show you inherited 340 acres in North Slope, Alaska, from a Walter Patterson back in 1998. My hand froze. Walter, that was my dad's brother. He was a man I'd met only once when I was 7 years old. I remember he lived out of a rust-covered truck and smelled like cold air and solitude. He had disappeared back to Alaska after just 2 days, and we never heard a word from him again." Before I could even process what she'd said, Linda continued, her voice suddenly tight and serious. "You owe $47,000 in back property taxes. If that amount is not paid by this Friday at 5 p.m. Alaska time, the land goes up for auction." I glanced down at the crumpled $17 bill sitting on my passenger seat. "Ma'am, with all due respect, you might as well be asking me for $47 million. I could hear her rustling through some papers. And then her voice changed, becoming urgent. "Mr. Patterson, have you been contacted by Western Oil, Arctic Reserve Energy, or Summit Petroleum?" "What? Why would oil companies be trying to contact a homeless plumber?" "Because, sir," she said, "your land sits on top of confirmed oil reserves estimated to be worth between $18 and $22 million. The can of beans slipped from my hand. The sauce splattered all over the floor mat, but I didn't even notice. My entire world went silent except for the ringing in my ears. "$22 million? I whispered, barely able to form the words. "Yes, sir, but if you don't pay those taxes, you lose everything." I'd already lost everything once. Just 6 months earlier, my ex-wife Sarah and her new boyfriend, who happened to be my former lawyer, Marcus, had systematically taken everything from me. My plumbing company, my house, my life savings, and worst of all, they had turned my own daughters against me. 22 years of my life's work had vanished in a courtroom where Sarah painted me as some kind of monster. I had walked out of that courthouse with nothing but a rusty old truck and $30,000 to my name. The truck got repossessed within a month. The money evaporated, eaten up by legal fees and just trying to survive. I'd been living in this car ever since. And now, this stranger on the phone was telling me I was sitting on a $20 million fortune. If, and only if, I could somehow come up with $47,000 in just 2 days. I told her straight up that I couldn't pay. Her voice softened. "Then you need to find someone who can, or everything is going to slip through your fingers all over again." I barely slept that night. The cold seeped into my bones, but it was nothing compared to the chill of her words. All I could think about was Sarah, right after the divorce, sneering at me. "Enjoy poverty, David." I pictured Marcus laughing as he held her hand in court. I thought about my daughters who refused to even take my calls because their mother had poisoned their minds against me. And then a memory surfaced from decades ago. I saw my Uncle Walter kneeling in front of me, his eyes as clear as the Alaskan sky. He had told me, "Sometimes the ground you're relying on is worth more than the sky you were looking at." At the time, I didn't understand, but now, maybe I did. Wednesday morning, I swallowed my pride. It was the hardest thing I'd ever had to do. I found a payphone and called my younger brother, Kevin. When he answered, the shock in his voice was immediate. "David? Where the hell have you been?" We've been worried sick about you." I took a deep breath and explained everything: the inheritance in Alaska, the land, the unbelievable tax bill, the impossible deadline, the chance, the miracle. When I finished, there was silence. Then he asked just one question: "How much do you need?" 47,000, I said, my voice cracking. "You'll have it tomorrow." There was no judgment in his voice, no hesitation, just family. The next day, Thursday, wearing the cleanest clothes I owned, which weren't very clean at all, I boarded a flight to Anchorage. A cashier's check for $47,000 was burning a hole in my pocket. By noon, I was standing in the very same records office, handing that check to Linda Martinez. She stamped the documents with a firm thud, looked up at me, and offered a soft smile. "You just saved a fortune," she said. Before I could even take a full breath, my phone vibrated. It was an unknown number from an Alaskan area code, I answered. "Mr. Patterson," a man's voice said. "This is John from Western Oil. We'd like to discuss acquiring the mineral rights to your new property." The game had just begun. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to see what happens next.